We're live.
All right. Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Chuck Roast. This is easily the best part of my day, maybe the best part of my week, maybe the best part of 2021. We'll see how it goes. But today we are roasting Charles Parnell Claremont. I don't know how many of you know that Chuck's middle name is Parnell. You tell me another guy who's got a middle name Parnell. Hard to find one of those. But we're here live for Giving Hearts Day. My name is Dave St. Peter, and I have known Chuck since we were probably both well, I think I first met him in a seventh grade basketball game at Simley Junior High when Chuck, of course, all star athlete, even in the seventh grade, was coming down the lane. My only defense for Chuck at the time was to grab his jersey and hang on. This is a true story. And Chuck gave me, and I was called for a foul on it. I actually thought it was a pretty good play, but I grabbed the jersey. Chuck gave me that look that we've all gotten at times. It's that I'm going to beat the shit out of you look that I got from Chuck. So I was scared to death. That was in the seventh grade. But it is good to be here today. We're going to try to raise a lot of money for Giving Hearts Day. And we all love Chuck for so many reasons. We're thrilled that we're able to do this. We send our love to the Claremont family and certainly Lisa and Tyler and Carly and everybody that's involved and everybody with the North Dakota Safety Council. We need to thank our matching sponsors who have made this possible today, the people at Pucklich, American Crystal Sugar, B&I Coal, Bobcat, the planning team, and Aflac. And we're so grateful for everything those partners have done to make this such a huge success. We ask you to visit the Giving Hearts Day website to donate to the North Dakota Safety Council. And this group of businesses is matching your donation up to $3,600, up to $3,600. So thank you once again to those partners for making this happen. So Chuck, I want to start this out by sharing, I think, a couple thoughts, at least from my perspective. The good news is we've got a lot of people on this call who I think may want to weigh in. Again, I met Chuck in that seventh grade basketball game. We became pretty good friends, around the ninth grade. Chuck was a good friend with a mutual friend of ours, Andrew Levi Bauer. There's another guy that should be roasted, I might add, with the middle name Levi. But, Chuck was a ninth grader. For some reason, he kept showing up at all the parties over for the St. Mary's kids. Chuck went to Simley, and I think he thought our girls were cuter, and one in particular that I won't go into. But wow. We actually had him. We had him ready to roll to enroll at St. Mary's High School. I think for his sophomore year. But Chuck chose to stay ultimately stay and go to Bismarck High School. I think a couple BHS football captains showed up at his house when they heard that Chuck was thinking about going to St. Mary's, and they gave Chuck the "I'm going to beat the shit out of you" look if you go to St. Mary's. So he decided to stay at Bismarck. I want to show my screen because one of the things that they encouraged us to do, Chuck, was to show photos and such. So bear with me here. I've got to try to find this as I go on here.
You do have a short memory because the initial.
What do you mean? You get to refute my stories?
Well, the conversation with you and I had a breakaway layup, and it wasn't just down the lane. It was a breakaway layup at Simley, and you grabbed my jersey from behind. And so that was the, completely ridiculous foul. So you deserved every bit of that intense look that you got, Dave, at that point in
time. Chuck, I disagree with you. It was a good defensive play. Chuck, his car back in those days was in El Camino. And Chuck, I think this is the actual vehicle. I'm not sure. But, there's a number of stories about this El Camino. And I'm going to come back to this, but I think this is good inspiration. So Chuck's storied, high school career. Chuck, I think, won a state championship in maybe discus. I don't know, Chuck, shot put, maybe, right? Both. Maybe had the state record for a long time. Basketball, obviously, basketball stalwart. Nothing else needs to be said about that, though. I think he went on to play probably the most games in amateur basketball. He certainly was kicked out of the most games in Bismarck amateur basketball by the referees. Maybe it was time to quit there, Chuck. Legion baseball. Baseball was Chuck's best sport. I got to see it firsthand early on. I think Chuck, had he focused on baseball, had a chance to do some special things as a catcher, what have you. Of course, football was maybe what Chuck's best known for. Bismarck High School wins a state championship, much to those of us over at St. Mary's chagrin, I guess it would have been the fall of 1984, Chuck's senior year. Now, we were invited to go to the game. I think it was out in Dickinson, a group of us. But you know what? I had no interest in going to watch Bismarck win a state championship. So what we did is we let ourselves into Chuck's house because we knew his parents were at the game, Leo and Elsie. And we started the party there at Chuck's house before the game even started. So that by the time that game ended, Chuck came back home and he found a whole bunch of people at his house already drinking their beer, eating their food, and hanging out. Is that correct, Chuck? Remember that day?
There was a pyramid, let's just say a pyramid of on my table when I got home.
Right.
For sure.
So right around that time, Chuck was starting to get recruited to go to different schools. I'll never forget the day that Chuck told Andy Bauer and I, hey, I got a letter from Dartmouth. And we told Chuck it's Dartmouth. And
Wow.
I think they wanted Chuck to come play football at Dartmouth. And, you know, it's interesting because Chuck chose the MCC over the Ivy League, which, you know, I've never really thought Chuck was a good idea for you. You could have gone to play in the Ivy League, and God knows where you'd be today. But Chuck was a highly touted athlete coming into the University of North Dakota. And, I think a lot of people projected him to be a legendary tight end. And I also remember the day Chuck came back from practice and he was pretty dejected. And I said, what's wrong? And he said, well, I'm not going to be a tight end. They moved me to right guard. And of course, that was Chuck's ticket to start for 4 consecutive years at UND and ultimately go on to become an all-conference player. One other UND football story, and then I'll get to this El Camino. One other football UND story is, one of the years at UND, they asked Chuck to host this hotshot recruit named Phil Hansen, who was looking at UND and NDSU. So Chuck calls, again, Andy Bauer and I, maybe Rick Gunderson, and says, hey, you got to come out with me tonight. Why is that, Chuck? Well, we're taking out this hotshot recruit. So we end up going out with Phil Hansen. Now, Phil Hansen ends up going to NDSU and then ultimately goes to the National Football League and has a celebrated career with the Buffalo Bills. I'm going to guess if you asked Phil Hansen today, why didn't you go to UND? He'd say this Chuck made him hang out with Dave St. Peter and Andy Bauer. Who are these clowns? I'm going to guess he had a better recruiting story at NDSU, Chuck. So I'm going to get to this El Camino. My best El Camino story with Chuck is we were in his El Camino one night dragging Maine. That's what we kids did back then. We dragged Maine. And Chuck, had a tendency to kind of be a little bit of a hard ass. And some guy pulled up next to us. And I think Chuck kind of gave him a look. And guess what? We're going to pull off the road and we're going to fight these guys. I'll never forget this, Chuck. And Chuck pulls in and I'm saying, Chuck, what are we doing here? I'm not exactly a fighter. Chuck, you might be, I'm not. Well, the guy gets out of his car and he has nunchucks. Remember that, Chuck? He has nunchucks. Chuck, get the hell out of here. So we were in this El Camino. Thankfully, it goes as fast in reverse as it goes in forward. My last story here, and then I'm going to get some other people involved. Involves softball. Now, Chuck and some of us on this call had the chance to play a lot of softball in the days. And my father's accounting firm, I see Kirk Olson's on here. Orser Olson and St. Peter was the name of our softball team. Well, we played a lot of softball back in the day. And then a few years ago, we had a reunion. We brought that team back together and we played in the McQuades. And for the most part, it was a colossal disaster. But at the end but we had a lot of fun. But our 2 best players on that team were Kurt Otto and Chuck Claremont. And Kurt Otto was the quarterback at UND. He's a gifted athlete. And I think his first at bat in the McQuades, he steps up. And after not playing softball for I don't know how many years, Kurt Otto hits a home run to left field. So I think, wow, that's impressive. Chuck gets up, for his first at bat, and he strikes out. And then he doubles down out on his second at bat and strikes out again. This image shows you Chuck disputing one of the strikeouts. Look at the face of the umpire. He is giving Chuck the look, go sit the F down, right? Chuck, you can't make it up. There are 100 more stories, most of which I can't share. But it is great to be here today, and I love the opportunity to share some of these. And I would invite so many other people on this call who probably want to join and either confirm some of the things I said or dispute. Rick Gunderson is on here. I'm going to go to Rick. Rick was Chuck's college roommate. That's where we met, Rick. Rick, what's your Chuck Claremont story? Rick.
Oh, where to begin? But I will confirm the Phil Hansen story, and that was quite the evening at the bridge, wasn't it?
Yeah, shocking. He didn't pick UND, Rick. Shocking.
Right, shocking. I'm not sure. Yes, Dave. I think you, I, and Andy, I think carted Phil around, and we asked, "Where is Chuck?"
Yeah, I got to know Chuck. Left him out with us.
Right. Absolutely.
Not a true story.
Yeah, so I spent 2 years with Chuck in a dorm room. So if you wanted to know how our dorm was, it was, I think it was Chuck's way. Done very well though. And we always had a good time there, and it was always a great little gathering spot. So, and if you ever wanted to know what, I don't know, Chuck, what were you, about 265 pounds in college there? Did you peak there? And back in the day, the dorms bunks were made out of 2x4s, and Chuck came and had this all made up and brought it in. And if you wanted to see a scary thought, sleeping up in a bunk with your face about 2 inches from the ceiling and a 260-pound man swinging from that and shaking the crap out of him. That was a fun time seeing that. So very good.
Rick, thank you, bud. Andy Noah, you got anything you want to say? Andy Noah was Fargo Shanley fame, North Dakota Safety Council board member, right, Chuck? Isn't he still on the board?
He is.
What's your best Chuck Claremont bullet from back in the day?
I don't know that I've got a lot. I guess the one thing I do recall, and I'm not saying this was actually true, but we had another high school friend that was a football guy and was friends with a lot of the NDSU Bison as we were growing up. And Chuck was playing for UND, and it was Mark Jenskow, and he'd always comment, the thing he'd always bring up, he'd say about Chuck, he says, yeah, it sure looked like he was on roller skates when he was playing the Bison.
I'll never forget that. Chuck's freshman year, we were at Dakota Field. I don't think any of us were sober. Chuck might have been sober, but
I was playing.
And I think we lost 49-0. And, I remember Chuck after the game, he wasn't in too good a mood, but yeah, I think we had Shane Thompson at quarterback, Chuck. That might have something else.
By the end, we did have Shane Thompson. I started that day out running onto the field with 18,000 fans, and I hit the turf, and I completely did a flip. That started my football career against NDSU. So 4 years later, I never did have a victory, unfortunately.
There's a couple folks on here that went to high school with Chuck. So they wore the Demon maroon. Kevin Klipfeld's on the state championship team, played softball. Obviously, Roddy Becker's here. Either you guys want to chime in? Rod, you got anything to offer this morning for our friend, Mr. Claremont?
You took one of my best stories, Dave, about the softball reunion.
Well, you can tell it again, man. It was a great day. It was the best part of McQuaid's, Chuck striking out his first 2 at bats.
No, it really wasn't.
If you could have heard what Lisa said, but yeah. Before that, funny thing about before that, Dave, he actually sent out the email telling everybody that this game isn't easy as it used to be.
Yes.
So I suggest you come take batting practice. And obviously didn't take enough batting practice. But I always think Chuck was one of our smartest guys that I knew. And we were at my current wife's lake cabin, and we're out in the middle of the lake. And Chuck, being a smart guy, he had this nice watch on, and I was, I can't swim, and Chuck's gonna carry me to safety. I suggested Chuck takes his watch off and put it in his shoes so it doesn't get wet. Well, he should have known that it was waterproof because I thought he's that smart guy, but he dove in and I was relying on Chuck to save my life. But he is almost more worried about the watch afterwards than saving my life. But yeah, we had some great times out at the lake cabin. But yeah, Chuck, one of the smartest guys I know, Chuck. Glad you're
Yeah,
my
that was-
friend.
Thanks, Rod. That was not a good story. We did make it back to safety, Rod. I did pull you and Lisa Claremont, who's on the call here, and your wife, Lisa. I did pull you three to safety once we got you back on the water or whatever the heck we were on.
Yeah.
Paddle boat. So I did get you to safety. I lost my watch, so thank you. You still owe me $50 for that watch, by the way.
All right. Yeah.
That's Chuck Claremont, saving lives over 54 years. Impressive.
See, it started way
Exactly.
back then, David. My
Very
career
impressive.
started back in high school.
All right. I'm looking at this. Who else wants to, Brent Free, you've known Chuck forever, you've got to have some wonderful
I got
stories.
stories. Yeah.
What an opportunity.
This is an opportunity.
Share how you know Chuck, and then let him have it.
So I met Chuck in college. My wife, Sherry Sorensen, went to high school with Chuck and really good friends with Chuck's wife, Lisa. And, I'm going to just piggyback on the competitive Chuck. He obviously is an accomplished athlete in everything he did. He took his teammates and a lot of times propped them up on his shoulders and took them to victory.
Except for the McQuaid, he didn't do it there. I can
Well,
assure you
there
that.
and you know what? I've been his golf partner for probably several dozen tournaments, and golf's been elusive to Chuck. He has yet to bring me to victory, and it's left me a little bitter. Maybe I have to look at myself in the mirror, but not today. Today it's Chuck's fault. So Chuck, we have some time left. I need you to commit and get a little more focused on the golf.
That's why I moved to Hawk Tree, Brent, for you.
I appreciate that. Well, time will tell. I have stories that I'm struggling with if I should share them. But I asked my wife to be on this call, and unfortunately she couldn't make it. And I told her to remind me of a story that we talk about every so often. But this goes back to junior high before I knew Chuck. This topic is, Chuck expects the people around him, and I'm sure maybe even at the North Dakota Safety Council, to make him look good.
Oh,
And
jeez.
so Chuck had asked Sherry out in junior high, my wife, and they went to a dance back in the day. And I said, was that a date? And Sherry goes, yeah, I suppose it was a date back then. I said, were you dating in junior high? And she said, well, yeah. So anyway, she goes to this date with Chuck, and they go to this junior high dance, and she can't remember Chuck. She said you were one of the earliest drivers in the grade. You were driving at like 15. You had a November birthday. She can't remember if you drove her there. This was obviously before Lisa entered the picture, and they get to the dance. You remember how junior high dances are? The boys are on one side, the girls are on the other, and that's how it was. And Sherry said, I just talked to all the girls, and Chuck talked to all the guys. And the next day in typing class, she said, we were in typing class together, and right outside of typing class was Sherry's locker, and there's a water fountain right next to the locker. And after typing class, Sherry's getting a drink, and there's Chuck standing over her. Chuck wasn't real happy with her, and was so frustrated that she was hanging with the girls and not him. So that's good for me because but that story comes up, Chuck, and it's a good one. So be nice, Chuck.
I think it's the other way around. She ditched me.
Chuck Claremont, Casanova. We've always known, right, Andy? No, we've
Yeah.
always known.
There's no Casanova there, I can tell you. Lisa,
Oh.
my wife who's on, she can tell you. I don't know how I got her. I know I
Yeah,
outpunted my coverage.
you've outpunted your coverage, dude. You did that. So congratulations on that.
I got my whole family on now. My daughter, my son, my wife. I love it.
Dave Glessner.
Oh,
Share with this group the first time you met Chuck, or how you know Chuck, and the floor is yours.
all right. Well, I met Chuck through you and Andy. when you guys were playing that board game that was the precursor to fantasy baseball.
Called APBA.
Whatever it was, I had no clue what it was. I
That
still
was
don't
the
have a clue
game
what it
that
is.
Chuck would sneak away and play. And if Lisa called while we were playing, everybody in the room was told, "Shut up! She doesn't know I'm over here playing this game." Right, Chuck?
True
That's
story.
right.
It's a true
Lisa,
story.
he played a lot of APBA in college when he
Who
could have been
won?
with you. Just
Who
know that.
won freshman year?
What's
Who was
that?
the grand champion? Who was the grand champion freshman year?
No, I think it was Chuck and the Mets, or I think so, Chuck. I think that would be my
It totally
guess.
was. Come on. How do you forget that? Totally was.
Yeah. I was unaware of that. Maybe I shouldn't have asked the question. You took my Parnell part out of what I was getting introduced with Chuck. So I know I called him the jolly red-haired giant in college after I met him.
I
Most
did have
recently,
red hair at one point.
now I call him the jolly gray-haired giant. And I'm kind of thinking before you retire, it's going to be the jolly bald-haired giant.
No, I think I'll have hair, David.
Oh, we all lose it. Probably the one thing I wanted to point out about Chuck, and everybody's pointing out his competitiveness and his drive. So a few years before he applied to be the executive director of the North Dakota Safety Council, as a former board member, I was on my way down for a meeting. And in planning for that, I called Chuck and said, let's go golf Hawk Tree. I've never played it. I want to see the course. And it's all set up. I take off from Fargo, and I guess I had scheduled a little early because the weather was crappy. I don't remember if it was spring or fall, but it was one of those 50-degree days that felt like it was 30, driving rain. I called Chuck probably at about Steel and said, I'm out. Let's just go to lunch or something. And he's like, Dave, I took the day off. We're playing golf. I'm like, oh, no, I don't play when it's cold and rainy. And he reminded me, Dave, I took the day off. We're playing golf. Back and forth we went. I said, fine, I'll golf. I've got nothing. I've got maybe a wind shirt, and that was it. Chuck shows up with dry gear from head to toe, the special gloves that hold the club better when they're wet. He's all set. And it was miserable. I almost ended our friendship that day. You almost were the executive director of the safety council because of that golf day.
Some scars, apparently. I see that.
What's
It's called being prepared, David. You still got scars, I can tell.
I think I was shaking more that day than I would be if I stood outside for an hour in this 20 below weather. No, I say that in jest. I mean, it was a fun day, but you proved your competitive spirit time and time again. And I know that you would have preferred to be a tight end, as Dave brought up, but that everybody needs an athletic guard. It helps
There
the
you go.
team.
There you go.
I know I have to flip a coin every time when somebody asks me who my favorite UND football player is, whether it's you or Dave Osborne, but it comes down, I think it lands about 50-50. And since one's a shirt tail relative via my wife, it's hard to say no to Dave, but
Good story.
you're legendary in Grand Forks.
Mhm.
All right.
Thanks,
I open
David.
it up to the floor. I'm certain others on this call have stories they want to share.
Go ahead,
Anybody want to
Carly.
raise their hand?
Hit me up, Carly. I know she's ready for something.
Carly, are you on it? Carly, welcome. Good to see you.
Hello. Okay, I was thinking about this and there's just too many. It's really hard to think. So I guess I'll just point out a couple. So I'll piggyback off of everyone's competitive side. So I remember my dad's coaching like my little girl soccer team. And like he needs to be so organized and like everything has to like go as planned, like whatever. So he has like this whole like practice plan, like what we're gonna do, whatever, like probably getting cones set up or something. And he turns around and all of us little girls like running around with cones on our head. And can you guys just imagine? He's like, this is not what I wanted planned. This is not what I wanted, and probably was not feeling that, but probably ended up doing pretty well that season. But then going off of sports, I remember it was like middle school and high school. And we always had to go to like morning practice or morning lift or whatever, things like that. And I remember we always, it was in the summer and we wanted to tan. Me and my friends wanted to tan rather than go to practice. So we would ask everyone else. Sorry, can you guys hear my computer buzzing? Sorry about that. So we would ask everyone's parents, and everyone's parents were okay with us not going to practice. But all the girls would be like, Carly, you have to ask Chuck. Like, Chuck's gonna make us go to practice. So I would call my dad and be like, Dad, everyone's parents said it was okay. Like if we didn't go to like open gym today, like whatever. But you bet all of us had to go to open gym and go to practice because he was not allowing us to skip that. I thought I had one more and now I just went blank. Okay, so when I was little and I'd always get in trouble, he would take away my cell phone. So like that was like the huge thing. I remember I would quickly like delete messages or something so like he wouldn't go through my phone. And then he'd take my phone and I would just start crying. I mean, like, I don't know how old I was, but so dumb. I'm like bawling. And I'm like, you're so mean. Like, probably like, I hate you. You're so mean. You're taking away my cell phone. And he, you know, thinks that everyone thinks he's just like this hardo guy. The second he sees me cry, like goes upstairs, come downstairs 5 minutes later, like, I'm sorry, sweetheart, like gives me my phone back and just is like, I love you. And then everything's okay again. I just think that's funny because he is like, of course, like the mean parent or like the hard parent, but always a soft spot for me, probably more so than Tyler, but if I got in trouble, I know it didn't last too long.
No, still doesn't last very long.
Yeah.
That's
But
awesome,
as of
Carly.
now, I might have to hand it over to Ty.
Yeah. Thank you, Carly. Tyler, what do you have? Good morning.
He's a shy one. Maybe he's not even on anymore.
I don't know. All right. Anybody else want to weigh in while we're searching for Tyler?
Hey Chuck, it's Vago, and I'm with the National Safety Council. Chuck, you remember when I asked you for your opinion? Yeah, me neither. Listen, I see that jacket, and I'm glad that, you know, when you look in the mirror, that, you know, mirrors don't lie, and it's really good that they don't laugh either. Is that good? Listen, when you roll your eyes like that, you know, when you're looking back there, see if you can see your brain. These are not going over. These are not going over so well. I'll leave you with this, right? You know, you go to Chuck and you try to bring up problems, and the first thing he says is, "I'm not your therapist." So
that's not true.
Casanova and problem solver. Those are the things we're getting out of this, right?
just remember, his alone time is for all of our safety. So
Thank you for that, Vago. I appreciate that. I like you, by the way.
there.
All right. Anybody else have a story they want to share?
Yeah, I'd like to share.
Hey, Tom.
I got to know Chuck through basketball in the amateur level, and he's much younger than I am, although you'd never know by looking at us.
Ouch.
But so I had been playing amateurs for a few years when he came back to Bismarck after he was done at UND, and we were kind of the two of the top teams in the league. So we had lots of battles, and we were on opposing teams for many years. And I remember one year they had the YMCA had a warm up like a 3-on-3 league in the fall before the amateur season started. And I remember our two teams were battling each other, and Chuck was reliving his glory days as a guard from UND and just pounding me like crazy. And I grabbed the ball and I said, Chuck, look at this ball. It's not oblong, it's round. And the fun thing is that Chuck, the competitor, was totally different than Chuck, the guy. And I found that out over the years that, well, you get him on the court and man, there was this competitor that just was there and wanted to win, but off the court, he was the greatest guy ever. And I, as competitors and as being against each other, I didn't know that as much. But when I later in our last few years of playing, we played together on the same team. We had a blast. It was, we had very good success too, but it was really fun because I got to know him more as a person and just to know who he was a little better in it. So I really appreciated that time, and I still, and whenever I think about that, I just have really good memories for that.
Awesome.
That's awesome,
Thanks,
Tom.
Tom.
Hey, Dave, I know I'm on this whole thing later on, but I just want to touch on one thing you talked about, the strikeout at the McQuaid tournament and
Strikeouts. There were two of them. There wasn't one of them. There were two
that's
of them.
exactly right. But it's kind of like, from your view, you were on the field and in the field of play, but standing out and watching it, it's kind of like, it was just kind of like this buzz. It was just kind of like, did Claremont just go down looking? And it was just, I mean, when you talk about an event that took place and the chatter that came about that, I tell you what, that's an all-timer right there, because it was the talk of the tournament until that game ended.
Scott, we all have a legacy, right? We all are known for something. And I think what's great is it was kind of the exclamation point on Chuck's athletic career was that moment.
I hope that wasn't it. Let's just say.
Oh, it wasn't. There's no doubt about it. It isn't, at least for this hour, it isn't.
Hey,
I get to control that.
Dave, if I'm not mistaken, to add to that, what was it before or after that? Was he not playing left field and he came in on a ball and the ball went right over the top of his head?
Yeah, he took about 4 steps in. Correct.
Okay.
I want you to know that it was corrective lenses. It was a problem I found out later on that, I needed glasses that I didn't have. So that's, there's always something that I can point the finger to, right? It's not my ability. It's something else that's caused it.
I think we call that displacement.
Yes, that's exactly what we call it, for sure.
All right. We've got a few
I wanna
minutes
know,
left
David,
before we have to go, but who else has a story or a comment? Even a compliment would be allowed.
I got a couple more things. One, the compliment. I will say that although I consider myself to be a little bit book smart, Chuck did help me quite a bit at UND with not only his drive on the field, but his drive in the classroom. And occasionally I had to go get an answer or two from him in order to succeed in the classes that I was trying to pass so they could get me out of UND. So I thank you for that, Chuck.
Right, that's because he went to class.
Right.
Was that important?
Exactly.
Maybe I didn't follow that. I followed Scotty Miles instead to the
Correct.
lunchroom and back to bed. Miss Marcy, my wife, who thinks highly of Chuck as I do, wanted me to point out a partial story from.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes. The group of us would get together once or twice a year and rent a suite or be granted a suite either at the Twin Stadium or for a UND hockey game and tell the same stories over and over again. Happened to be post a hockey game. We were at Whitey's trying to relive our college days. And there were some neighbors that weren't quite as friendly as we were. It became entertaining in the bar. And Miss Marcy seems to think that she wants to say and wants the world to know that she thinks she was tougher than Chuck that night.
Yeah,
That might be a little too personal for the entire group or for the web stream, but we'll leave it just like that. And because I know you want to respond, but you can't.
I can. The only guy that was a friend that day was Kevin Clipfo, and I think he's somewhere on the call here. He's the
I'm
only
looking
one
for
that
him,
supported
Chuck.
me. He was here earlier.
Yeah, he supported you. I ran for the exit. I could tell you that. I wanted no part of that.
We were
Yeah,
out
Kind
in
of
Red
like,
Zephyr by the
kind of like the nunchuck story, which
Yeah,
is
I
true.
was
The
gonna
guy
say-
had nunchucks. He was going to fight Chuck and I.
Speaking of being a wingman, Dave, I mean, what a great friend, right? I mean, when it comes to everything else, he was a great friend, but 2 times when I needed him, he wasn't there by my side. He was, I mean, the El Camino story was, he literally I was looking, once the guy started pulling a Bruce Lee impersonation, I was looking
Yes.
for Dave. He had jumped in the El Camino and he was backing away with the passenger door open, screaming,
Yes.
let's go. I mean, where are you next to me, man? Help me out.
Nothing good would have come from me battling some guy with nunchucks. I can
No,
assure
probably
you
not.
that.
I should probably be thanking you for that. I guess that's. a good
Yeah, we
point.
should. I don't think Lisa would have approved of it either at the time. And she's on the call. So,
And I
Yeah,
will say when we were at Whitey's, I was on Dave's hip heading out the door while Miss Marcy was behind helping you.
Your wife, she was the only one helping me other than Kevin Clipfeld. So she was very getting my shoes for me as they flew off after I slipped and fell, let's just say. Yes, your wife was very kind to me in that situation. Yeah.
David, thank you for reminding me of the Whitey story. That's a good one. I should have had that on my list as well.
Well,
Anybody
I
else
do
have
have to-
anything? We got time for one or two more.
David, I got to thank you before we get off, because, I probably didn't thank you enough for being the one time you were really my wingman. I recall we were at an establishment in East Grand Forks again, and somehow something happened inadvertently and my hand got cut. And being the good friend you were, you let me drive myself in your car to the emergency room back in Grand Forks, and you were with me the entire time, I want you to say. So thank you for being there with me as I went into the emergency room to get stitched up. Dave stayed by my side the entire time and let's just say entertained the doctor and the assistant that was with him. He was very entertaining. And so I probably haven't thanked you enough, Dave, for being there for me. Let me use your car after I got my hand cut. So I really appreciate that. It was a memory that I probably haven't thanked
Chuck,
you.
I would have shared that story, but I don't remember it. So it might have been an afternoon at Buck Pictures or something. So I don't recall it.
It probably was an evening for sure.
I'm happy the statute of limitations on a lot of that stuff is run out. So God forbid there's ever a Dave St. Peter roast. I'll be in big trouble. I know that.
Yeah.
Anybody else have a story? All right.
Hi,
Well,
this is
thank-
Andy again. Before I
Yeah.
jump off here, I do want to just in all seriousness, thank Chuck for the job he's done. I've been on the board for quite a while and consider him a good friend prior to get involved with the safety council. But since he's taken over the safety council, I think our organization has been in great hands. I think he's put together a great team of people and has really brought the organization forward. So I think that competitiveness and I think soft heart and at the same time a real drive has been a great attribute for the safety council, and really wanted to extend my appreciation to all the hard work he's done over the years.
Thank you, Andy.
That's a great way to finish it off, Andy, and I would echo that. I think, Chuck, on behalf of everybody on this call, we appreciate you. We appreciate you as a friend, as a husband, as a father, and we give you a hard time, but we know that one, you have thick skin and can take it, and two, you dish it out pretty well yourself. But I know you bring community together in Bismarck. You also do a lot of great things for the safety council that impacts a lot of lives, frankly, saves a lot of lives. So we appreciate you. We think that, this is an important cause. Obviously, you're raising money. People can go to the stadium and the lodge to get their chuck roast Philly. And for those of you on the call that have already contributed as part of Giving Hearts Day, thank you. For those of you on the call that have not, please consider doing so. It's a great cause. There's a simple link that on the information that on the Safety Council website, and make a contribution today. I can assure you the dollars will impact a lot of lives in a positive way. So Chuck, I'll give you the last word. Thank you for allowing us to do this. It's good to see you, my friend. God bless you and Lisa, Tyler, and Carly.
No, thank you, David. I mean, it's been a fun day so far, and it's nice to see friends joining in for the great cause. And I do have thick skin. I can say I've definitely taken a lot of shit over the years, and you're right. I do a pretty good job dishing it out. I can say maybe back in the college days, I can think of, since there's my roommate and you, and I can think of many times that I was phone calls I would get from you or Rick on Friday nights when I was supposed to be in my dorm room sleeping and getting ready for the football game, where I would get phone calls from you guys to come pick you up. So, I mean, even at that point in time, I had safety concerns in my you know, so maybe those are just the very beginning of the safety and why I ended up getting into it. Scott Woodmansey's on the call. There was probably a time or 100 when I maybe picked you up and gave you a ride home. So I appreciate everybody on here, and it's awesome that my kids got a chance to be on here. I know my wife is listening. She probably can't, she's not one to probably say much, but I love you, honey. And I appreciate you guys being on. It means a lot. Even the crap you gave me, I know it was all in sincerity. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Chuck. And by the way, I appreciate you picking us up. There were a couple nights you didn't pick me up, which I'm still regretting to this day. So thank you for that.
Yes.
And I will
Yes.
leave you with this note. Your good friend Andy Bauer wanted to be here today, and he's gonna save his roast for you in person. He's on the third hole at Stream Song right now. So Stream Song Red. So shocking, he's on a golf trip. I know.
Right. Shocking. Right. Yeah. That's too bad. So that's cool.
All right, everybody.
Awesome.
Thanks for being here.